Welcome back to What's Happening to My Body. Today, we're talking about something that so many women quietly struggle with, but rarely feel safe enough to talk about honestly. We're talking cravings, emotional eating, and that familiar moment late at night where everything you promised yourself during the day seems to fall apart. The 9 p.m. snack spiral. For a lot of women, this is where the shame lives. You might spend the entire day feeling in control, eating well, being disciplined, telling yourself you're doing the right things, and then suddenly in the evening, it feels like something switched. You find yourself in the kitchen, eating without really thinking, and afterwards, you're left feeling frustrated, guilty, or disappointed in yourself. And the question that keeps coming up is why can't I just stop?
And this is exactly why this episode matters. Because emotional eating and cravings during perimenopause are not a failure of willpower, discipline, or self control. They are a response, a very understandable response to changes happening in your hormones, nervous system, stress levels, and sleep. And when we stop treating cravings as the enemy, and start seeing them as information, everything shifts. So let's dive right in and let's talk about why cravings often increase during perimenopause. One of the biggest drivers is hormonal fluctuations, particularly changes in estrogen. Estrogen plays a role in how sensitive we are to insulin and how stable our blood sugar is and how our brain processes reward and pleasure. Now, when estrogen fluctuates, blood sugar regulation becomes less predictable. You might go longer without feeling hungry, but then suddenly feel ravenous. Or you might feel fine during the day and crave sugar or carbs intensely in the evening. And this isn't just random, it's actual physiology. And there's also a strong link between estrogen and dopamine, the neurotransmitter that is involved in motivation and reward. When dopamine is spiraling and dipping, the brain looks for fast, reliable sources of pleasure, and food is one of the most acceptable and accessible ones.
Well said. And this is why cravings can feel so specific and so urgent. It's rarely a craving for something neutral or balanced. It's chocolate, toast, chips, cereal, or something sweet and comforting. And when this happens repeatedly, women often start telling themselves story like, I have no self-control or I'm addicted to food. But what's really happening is that the body is trying to regulate itself in the fastest way it knows how. Cravings aren't a character flow. They are a signal. And another huge piece of the puzzle is stress, especially how it builds throughout the day. Most women in perimenopause are carrying a lot. They're managing work, family, relationship, mental load, or expectations, and often while trying to keep their health perfectly on track. By the evening comes round, their system is exhausted, and that exhaustion isn't just mental; it's physiological.
Yes, absolutely. And cortisol, your main stress hormone, is often higher
Yeah.
or more dysregulated during perimenopause. And when cortisol is elevated, the body looks for quick energy and relief. So, this is why cravings tend to hit hard at night when stress is accumulated throughout the day and the willpower is actually depleted. And there's also serotonin to consider. Serotonin helps us feel calm, grounded, and emotionally regulated. Carbohydrates temporarily increase that serotonin availability in the brain. So when women crave carbs or sugar at night, it's often the nervous system looking for calm and comfort, not just extra calories. Also, sleep disruption makes this even more pronounced, and you feel so much more of that need. So when sleep is poor, hunger hormones increase and satiety hormones decrease, and then cravings obviously intensify.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Kat, but I can perfectly relate with this. For me, like night, it's the perfect timing when I like to enjoy something maybe on my couch. Is
Yeah.
like part of my relaxing routine. And late night eating isn't a lack of discipline. It's often your body saying, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, and I need something to feel better right now.
Yes, 100%. I can totally relate to that. And it can be very helpful to understand the difference between physical hunger and emotional or nervous system hunger without actually judging ourselves. Because physical hunger usually builds gradually. And you might notice low energy or stomach hunger, your stomach gurgling, difficulty concentrating, or feeling more irritable. And food in general sounds very appealing. Now, emotional hunger often feels a little bit different. It can come on suddenly, feel or urgent, or very specific. It's often linked with like something stressful happening, fatigue, loneliness, or sadness and need for comfort. But here's the most important thing about this: emotional hunger is still a real need. So it's not just always about solved about with food alone.
Yeah, and this is where so many women turn against themselves. They tell themselves they shouldn't be hungry, that they've already eaten enough, or that they need to be stronger. But emotional hunger doesn't respond to logic or rules. In fact, the more you ignore it or try to suppress this hunger, the louder it tends to become. So instead of asking, how do I stop eating like this? A more supportive question is, what is my body actually asking for right now?
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is food, but sometimes it's rest, reassurance, comfort, or permission to stop holding everything together. So let's talk a bit about willpower because this idea causes so much harm. If willpower worked, you wouldn't still be struggling. Most women listening to this are incredibly disciplined in other areas of their life. So when eating feels out of control, it's not because you suddenly lost that trait.
Well said, because this is a real big issue for a lot of people. And people start thinking that willpower is a personality trait, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
It's actually a biological resource. And it's influenced by sleep, stress, blood sugar stability, nervous system state, and overall load. So by the end of the day, willpower is actually depleted, especially if you've been under eating, over exercising, or even just being emotionally stretched. So this is why relying on willpower alone sets a lot of women up to failure. And when you kind of like, quote unquote, obviously fail, that shame and guilt kicks in, and that increases that emotional eating pattern.
Yeah, and this is how the cycle forms: restriction during the day, overeating at night, guilt, and then more restriction. For many women, this cycle has been repeating for years. And perimenopause often makes it louder, not because you're worse, but because your body is less tolerant of stress.
100%. And the goal is not to eliminate cravings or emotional eating. Instead, we want to respond to them a little bit differently, have some strategies behind it. And one of the most powerful shifts is moving from reaction to anticipation. Now, if evenings are hard, that's not just like a personal flaw, that's kind of data, information. Support needs to be built into that time of the day so you don't feel like you're failing. And that might mean eating enough during the day, especially protein and carbohydrates, to feel fuller for longer. Or it might mean having a planned evening snack instead of like just being like, no, I'm not going to eat in the evenings. It might mean reducing decision fatigue by knowing what food is available or having some meal prep ready to go. And another key tool is your nervous system regulation. Even small things like slowing down, being warm or cool in summer, obviously, deep breathing, changing environments, reading, it can be coloring books, whatever that works. All these things can reduce the intensity of cravings.
Yeah, and awareness matters more than control. Before eating, you might gently pause and ask yourself, am I hungry, tired, overwhelmed, lonely, or seeking comfort? And here, there's no right answer. If food is part of the solution, that's perfectly fine. And if food isn't enough, that doesn't mean you failed. It means there's another need underneath. This isn't about perfect responses, it's about building trust with your body again. When the body feels safe, supported, and fueled, cravings often soften naturally. So, this is a topic we talk a lot about with our clients because this emotional eating and using food as comfort is pretty usual. So, here again, you are not alone. And if this episode made you feel seen, relieved, or less alone, that's exactly why we are here. You're not broken, you're not weak, you're responding naturally to a lot of internal and external pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And having the right tools will always help you feel more in control of what's going on with your body. So, in our next episode, we'll actually be talking about a little bit more about on how to rebuild that trust in your body during perimenopause, especially after years of diet control or disconnect with it. So, make sure, as always, to follow our podcast and also follow us on our social media at NutriFit Project. And if you know someone who beats themselves up over nighttime eating or they're just struggling with managing symptoms, make sure to share this episode with them. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for being here and for listening with an open mind. Bye.